I'm Jack, a 30-year-old man, and anyone familiar with my life would confirm I've been self-sufficient since turning 18. I financed my own education, worked relentlessly, and never sought financial aid from my parents. Yet this independence seemingly didn't grant me peace. Instead, it positioned me as the family's default problem solver. It all started with an unexpected call from my mother, Carol. She rarely initiates conversations unless there's an issue she expects me to resolve. She's not one for casual check-ins about my day. So, when her name appeared on my screen, I anticipated trouble. I answered, and she immediately launched into awkward small talk, which is completely out of character for her. "Hey Jack, how's work still in finance?" she asked, as if she hadn't disregarded my career path for the past decade. Playing along, I replied, "Yeah, Mum, still in finance. What's up?" That's when she delivered the bombshell. "Your sister's in trouble." I'd love to say I was surprised, but I wasn't. My sister, Karen, 27, has a long history of creating chaos and expecting others to clean up after her. These aren't minor inconveniences. They've escalated into full-blown disasters, consistently landing in my lap. Take, for instance, the time she borrowed my car without permission, only to wreck it while texting. She called me in hysterics, unsure what to do. Like an idiot, I dropped everything to help her. I handled the insurance, paid the deductible, and even absolved her of the damage, all because she promised it would never happen again, but it did. Then there was the time she convinced me to co-sign her first apartment lease, claiming she just needed a little boost. 3 months later, she stopped paying rent, dodged the landlord, and left me to deal with the fallout. I spent months salvaging my credit while she simply moved back home with our parents, acting as if it were no big deal. Not only does she make mistakes, but she's never held accountable. Every time she messes up, someone, usually me, has to swoop in and fix it, while she plays the victim. And the worst part, zero gratitude. It's as if she believes the world owes her a safety net. So, when my mother called to inform me Karen was in jeopardy, I felt no worry or concern. I was exhausted from being perpetually drawn into her messes, from always bearing the brunt of her recklessness. Honestly, I was just surprised it had taken this long for something significant to occur. I sighed, dreading what I was about to hear. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, not out of a desire to help, but to gauge the severity of this latest predicament. Then she hit me with it. Karen had accumulated $43,500 in debt. $40,000. I had to mentally repeat that number just to process it. How does one even reach that point? Apparently, she had, once again, spent money she didn't have. This time, however, she owed more than just credit card companies. She'd borrowed from unscrupulous individuals, the kind you can't simply ignore when bills pile up. Now, they were after her. And my mother's brilliant solution, of course. Me, why wouldn't it be? In her eyes, I was the one with the stable career, the responsible sibling, the person who could always be relied on to mend the unfixable. Karen's mistakes weren't the issue. The problem was my reluctance to rush to her aid. "You need to help her," she pressed, as if my role as the family's ATM was a foregone conclusion. I paused, letting her words sink in. "How, exactly, can I help?" I inquired. "You've done so well for yourself, Jack. You can just pay it off for her," she stated casually, as if suggesting I pick up takeout. I let out a sharp laugh, not from amusement, but from sheer disbelief. "Mum, I didn't borrow that money. Why is this my responsibility? I'm not paying anything." A heavy silence followed, as if she was processing my outright refusal. Then she snapped, launching into full-blown guilt mode. "She's your sister. Family helps each other. Do you want her to get hurt? Is that what you want?" Her words came quickly, almost frantic, as if she couldn't fathom my reluctance to immediately leap to Karen's rescue. It wasn't a plea. It was an accusation, implying my refusal was the real problem, not Karen's choices. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my temper. "Mum, I've helped her before. Multiple times. And what does she do? Blows it all on designer bags, lavish vacations, and who knows what else. She doesn't take responsibility for anything because you and Dad have always bailed her out. I'm not doing it this time." My logic, it seemed, didn't register. "She's struggling, Jack," she retorted. "She's not like you. She's not strong enough to handle this." "Struggling," I repeated. "She's reckless. She spends money she doesn't have, and now she's in deep with some shady people. And instead of dealing with it herself, she's expecting me to swoop in and clean up her mess again." "She's your sister," Mum snapped. "Family looks out for each other." "No, Mum," I countered, my voice firm. Families don't take advantage of each other. This isn't me turning my back on Karen. This is me refusing to enable her bad decisions. She needs to grow up and face the consequences for once. Mum wasn't having it. Do you want her to get hurt, Jack? Do you want that on your conscience? Look, I'm not heartless. I don't wish anything terrible upon Karen, but let's be honest. She's an adult. A 27-year-old adult who understood exactly what she was getting into when she borrowed that money. That's precisely what I told my mother, but she wouldn't listen. She's not as strong as you, Jack, she insisted. You've always had it together, and she hasn't. You can afford to help her. It's the least you can do, after all we've done for you, done for me. I scoffed. Like what? Making me pay rent the minute I turned 18. Refusing to help with my college tuition. Yeah, thanks for all that support, Mom. She fell silent for a moment, then came back swinging. If you don't help, we'll have no choice but to cut you off. Do you want that? I couldn't help but laugh. Cut me off from what you don't support me. I've been on my own for over a decade. Your threats don't work on me. With that, I hung up. After that day, they all went silent, and while I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, it was only the beginning. The silence didn't last long. I clearly underestimated my mother's persistence when she wanted something. After I shut her and my father down, they changed tactics. If the direct approach failed, they planned to guilt-trip me into submission, and when I say all out, I mean it. Initially, it was just simple text messages like, "I just don't understand how you can let this happen to your sister." Then, as days passed, they grew more dramatic. "Do you know the kind of people Karen is dealing with? They're dangerous, Jack. I can't sleep at night worrying about her." I disregarded them at first. I simply lacked the energy for the manipulation. But they didn't stop. Mum, on the other hand, went above and beyond with her voicemails. And let me tell you, she has a knack for sounding on the verge of tears, even when she's not. "Jack," she stated in one, "Karen might not make it out of this if you don't help. I don't think I can live with myself if something happens to her." It felt like a masterclass in guilt-tripping. If there were awards for this, she'd be a 3-time champion by now. Then my father, Edward, decided to get involved. He's usually a background player in these family dramas, but not this time. He left me a voicemail that began calmly enough. "Hey Jack, just calling to check in, ... But suddenly, his tone shifted. "Look, I know your mum can come on a bit strong, but this is serious. Karen's in deep, and we can't fix this without you. You've always been the strong one, the dependable one. Don't let us down now." That remark, the dependable one, really grated on me. I've spent my entire life being the dependable one, and it's only earned me more responsibility and less gratitude. Dependable doesn't mean I'm a doormat. They apparently missed that memo. But the guilt avalanche didn't stop there. They decided to call in reinforcements from their extended family, from who knows where. I started hearing from my Uncle Greg, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. He called me out of the blue, as if we were best friends. "Hey Jack, long time no talk. How's life?" I immediately understood why he was calling, but I let him ramble for a while before he got to the point. "You know, family's important," he continued, in that overly sincere tone people use when they're about to say something they know you'll dislike. "And Karen's just ... she's struggling. We all go through rough patches, and sometimes we need a little help." "Greg, please listen," I interrupted. "Did my mum put you up to this?" He chuckled nervously, as if I'd caught him. "Well, she might have mentioned it." I didn't even let him finish. "Look, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not paying debt. It's not my responsibility." You'd think that would be the end of it. But no. The next day it was my Aunt Janice, then my cousin Emily. They all used the same script. "Karen's in trouble. She needs help. I'm the only one who can help her." I don't understand why they were all so concerned about Karen. It's not as if she were a helpless child who made an honest mistake. She's an adult who spends money like it's monopoly currency and then acts surprised when the bill comes due. What made matters worse was that none of them even attempted to grasp my perspective. When I stated that I wasn't willing to squander $43,500 on someone else's missteps, they reacted as if I were speaking a foreign language. "But she's your sister," they'd argue, as if that would magically change my mind. The worst aspect, however, was the smear campaign. My mother, in her infinite wisdom, decided that if direct guilt-tripping was ineffective, she'd try to turn the rest of the family against me. She started informing everyone in the family group chat, which I'd abandoned long ago, that I was self-centered, ungrateful, and a total jerk. According to her, I'd forgotten my roots and was too preoccupied with my glamorous city life to care about my family. I found out about it when my cousin Caleb called. He's one of the few family members I get along with, and he filled me in on the situation. "Dude, he exclaimed. "Carol's been talking mad crap about you. She told Aunt Janice that you said Karen deserves whatever happens to her." I was furious, not because I cared what Janice thought, but because my mother was outright lying about me to make herself look like the victim. I told Caleb the truth. I had never said anything like that, and he believed me. "Yeah, I figured she was exaggerating," he said. "It's just messy, man, messy. Messy doesn't even begin to describe it." But the true drama began when Karen decided to join the chaos herself. Until then, she had been quiet, not a single text message or phone call. I suspected she was embarrassed. For once it turns out she was just waiting to strike, and when she did, it was anything but subtle. She texted me one night, and it wasn't a plea, but an accusation. "I can't believe how selfish you're being, Jack. You know I'm in serious trouble, and you're just sitting there doing nothing. You're supposed to be my brother." Selfish. That was rich, coming from her. Karen's entire life has been a series of terrible decisions with someone else cleaning up her messes. I didn't respond. Honestly, I didn't think it deserved one. The next morning, she upped the ante. "You have the money. Stop acting like it's such a big deal. Just pay it off and I'll pay you back when I can." That sounded like a reasonable solution, as if I were the unreasonable one for refusing to pay $43,500 to rectify her mistake again. I didn't bother to react. That of course didn't go down well. She went into full meltdown mode, sending me long, rambling texts about how I was abandoning her and how I'd never understand what it's like to struggle. And then, just to make matters worse, she added, "Mom and Dad always said you'd come around eventually. Guess they were wrong." That line was different, not because it made me reconsider anything, but because it reaffirmed what I had always believed. This wasn't just Karen acting recklessly. My parents had been enabling her, convincing her that I would always be there to fix her disasters. I'd had enough by then. I stopped responding to texts, ignored phone calls, and focused solely on my own life. Just when I thought they couldn't stoop any lower with the guilt trips, ambushes, and smear campaigns, I realized I had underestimated how far they were prepared to go. My parents and Karen had played every card from their deck, or so I thought. It turned out they had one last card up their sleeve, and this one shattered any illusion I had about their not crossing the line. I received a call from my bank. Everything quickly spiraled into total anarchy. The bank's fraud department notified me of questionable activity on my account. Apparently, someone attempted to gain access to it using forged documentation that didn't match their records. They tried to alter my contact information and transfer funds, but the system flagged the transaction as suspicious and halted it. While the bank couldn't provide precise details, they did mention the documentation suggested it was someone close to me. Someone close to me. I didn't have to ask. I already knew. Karen. Who else could it be? The timing was far too convenient. She had just texted me about her urgent situation, and when I refused to give in, this happened. I was seething, forging documents to access my account. That's not just desperate, it's criminal. I couldn't let this go. That evening I drove straight to Karen's place, my fury barely contained. Of course, I didn't call first. I'd had enough of being polite. She opened the door. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "You tried to steal from me," I stated, getting right to the point. Her expression changed for a split second before she crossed her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The audacity," I retorted. "Don't even try that, Karen. The bank flagged your little stunt. They told me someone forged documents to access my account. Do you even realize how serious that is?" She let out an exaggerated sigh, as if I was being overly dramatic. "Oh, relax, Jack. It's not like I actually got anything." I blinked, surprised by how easily she dismissed it. "Relax. Are you seriously trying to defend this by saying you failed? You tried to commit fraud, Karen. That's a crime." She shrugged, completely unconcerned. "What else was I supposed to do? You left me no choice. You refused to help me when I needed it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No choice. Karen, you had every choice. You could have owned up to your mistakes, taken responsibility, and figured out how to fix this yourself. But instead, you thought stealing from me was the solution. She scowled. "Don't act all high and mighty. Mom and Dad said you'd never let me struggle. They told me you'd come around eventually if I pushed hard enough. I just had to wait for you to get over your little tantrum." I stood there, stunned. Little tantrum. That wasn't frustration bubbling in my chest. It was outrage. This wasn't simply her being careless. This was years of my parents coddling her, feeding her delusions, and treating me as if I only existed to clean up her messes. "Unbelievable," I muttered to myself, rather than to her. "Do you even understand what you've done, Karen? You crossed a huge line. She rolled her eyes, doubling down rather than backing away. I'm not the villain here, Jack, you are. You've turned your back on your family. If you just helped me in the first place, none of this would have happened. That was it, the final straw. I took a long breath, not to remain calm, but to ensure that I didn't say anything I would later regret. I'm done, I mumbled, turning towards the door. But before I left, I looked at her one last time. If you ever try something like this again, I won't just cut you off. I'll make sure the cops know exactly what you did. Grow up, Karen, you're not a child anymore. I didn't wait for her response. I returned to my car, my mind racing. How did it come to this? How had my family become so toxic that my own sister thought it was acceptable to steal from me and blame me for it? I knew this was it. There was no going back from this. I needed to cut ties for good, but I knew it wouldn't be that straightforward. My parents weren't about to let this go. Karen wasn't about to let this go. And if they thought I was going to roll over and accept it, they were mistaken, and I was correct. The next day, my mother called. I didn't pick up, but she did leave a voicemail. Jack, your sister told me what happened, she said. I can't believe you threatened her like that. She's struggling, and instead of helping her, you're making things worse. You should be ashamed of yourself. I replayed the message 3 times to make sure I heard her correctly. Karen attempted to steal from me, and I somehow became the bad guy. It was so ridiculous that I didn't answer. What was the point? They weren't going to see reason, but it didn't mean I was going to let it go. I called my bank and requested that they tighten the security on my account by implementing password changes, two-factor authentication, and other measures. I wasn't going to give Karen or anyone else another chance to mess with my finances. For a few days, everything was quiet. Too quiet. But if there's one thing I've learned about my parents, it's that they won't take no for an answer, at least, not the first 100 times. Don't tell me in the comments that I can just say no because they don't get it. So, when I got home from work a few days later and saw their car parked in my driveway, I wasn't surprised. Annoyed, yes. Shocked, not at all. I took a deep breath, parked behind them, and sat in my car for a minute to mentally prepare myself. I knew they weren't there for a casual conversation. They weren't coming to apologize or make amends. No, it was going to be another round of guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail, and I was already fatigued just thinking about it. When I eventually got out of my car, my mother was waiting by the front door, looking as if she was ready to deliver a lecture, and my father stared at the ground, as if he'd rather be anywhere else. We need to talk, my mother stated once I got close enough. I don't think we do, Mum. I think everything that needs to be said has already been said. Obviously, she ignored me. This nonsense has gone on long enough. We're your parents. Karen is your sister. This isn't how families behave. I unlocked the door and went inside, fully expecting her to follow me. Of course she did, with Dad trailing her like a lost puppy. You're just going to walk away while we're talking to you? Mom asked. No, I'm going inside my house so I don't have to stand outside listening to more of your nonsense. I told you, if you're going to lecture me, you might as well do it where I'm comfortable. She didn't like my tone, but I honestly didn't care. She'd already breached every boundary I tried to create, so why bother pretending I was fine with it? My mother wasted little time getting into her usual speech. Jack, you need to stop this stubbornness. Karen is struggling, and it's your responsibility as her brother to help her. She's family. Yeah, family. I totally get it, I told them. So let me tell you something about family, Mum. Family doesn't lie, steal, and manipulate to get what they want. Family doesn't expect one person to sacrifice everything while someone else coasts through life without consequences. So don't come in here lecturing me about family. My father eventually spoke up. This isn't about taking sides, Jack. It's about fixing things. You're the only one who can do that. I laughed bitterly. Fix things? You mean like paying off Karen's debt, covering for her fraud attempt, letting her get away with everything, like she always does? Yeah, no thanks. I'm done fixing things for her. She's your sister, Mum exclaimed, her voice rising. Do you know what it would do to her if something happened? How would you live with yourself? And how do you live with yourselves? I responded. You've spent her entire life enabling her, making excuses for her and throwing me under the bus whenever it's convenient. You created this problem, not me. So don't you dare try to make me feel guilty for not cleaning up your mess. Mom's face turned crimson. I thought she was about to burst. If you're not going to help, she replied, then we'll have no choice but to cut ties with you. No holidays, no family gatherings, nothing. I stared at her, trying to determine whether she genuinely thought that was a threat. Mom, I've been on my own my whole life. You cutting me off is like firing someone who already quit. She opened her mouth to argue, but Dad stopped her. Carol, stop. This isn't helping. He turned to me, his gaze softening. Jack, we just want what's best for everyone. Karen's made mistakes, sure, but she's still family. Can't you just meet us halfway? I couldn't take it anymore. Do you even hear yourselves? You're asking me to shell out $43,500 for someone else's mistakes. How is that halfway? What is Karen contributing to this so-called compromise? I could feel the wrath rising in my chest, and my thoughts were racing faster than I could speak. Every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd stood up when they wouldn't, every instance of them putting Karen first, it all hit me at once. I pushed off the counter with deliberate movements and walked towards the door. My heart was pounding, but my face remained serene. No yelling, no arguing. They no longer deserved that much attention from me. I swung the door open wide and said, "Get out." My mother blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me, get out," I repeated. "This conversation is over. You're not going to guilt me into paying Karen's debt, and you're not going to manipulate me into feeling bad about it. So unless you have something productive to say, you can leave." Mom seemed to want to quarrel, but Dad gently grasped her arm. "Come on, Carol, let's go." She scowled at me as she walked by, her words venomous. "You'll regret this, Jack." Mark my words. I closed the door behind them and stood there. It was quiet. Finally, silence. But the silence didn't last long. The entire issue had been bothering me, and against my better judgment, I decided to find out what was going on with Karen. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to know how far things had deteriorated. I contacted a mutual friend, who still kept in touch with her, thinking they might fill in the gaps. "What's going on with Karen?" I inquired. "I haven't heard anything since." "Well, you know," the friend responded without hesitation. "Oh, you haven't heard? It's bad. The people she owes money to aren't messing around. They trashed her car and completely destroyed it. Windows, tires, everything. She's freaking out, saying she doesn't feel safe." I should have felt sadness, concern, or anything, but instead I felt exhausted. She had put herself into this predicament, and now she was paying the price. Of course, I knew this would only lead to greater pressure from my parents to intervene and rescue her. After a few days, I still had no direct contact from Karen or my parents, only silence. It seemed peculiar, like the quiet before the storm. And sure enough, the storm arrived, a letter from an attorney. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was reading. My parents threatened legal action, alleging that I had a moral obligation to support my family. They wanted me to repay Karen's debt, and they were prepared to take me to court over it. I couldn't believe it. After everything they'd done, they were willing to go this far. Part of me wanted to chuckle at the absurdity of the situation, but largely I felt numb. This was no longer a family. It was a battleground, and I was done fighting. What truly shocked me was the sheer audacity of the situation. It was almost remarkable. Look how absurd this sounds. My own parents are threatening legal action because I refused to clean up Karen's $43,500 mess. It was as if they had abandoned any pretense of being a family in favor of open animosity. I didn't have to think about what to do next. The first phone call I made was to my lawyer, who fortunately has a good sense of humor. When I recounted the scenario, he chuckled and stated, "Jack, they don't have a leg to stand on. Let them file if they want. It'll get laughed out of court." Their threat never materialized, but it was a reminder of how toxic they were, which only strengthened my resolve to avoid interaction. That they were willing to go that far was enough for me. I realized I couldn't keep this door open much longer, not even a crack. I'd been holding on to a glimmer of optimism that we could somehow fix things, but this was the final straw. I blocked my parents' phone numbers that same day. No calls, messages, or voicemails. I went through my social media accounts and blocked them too. I repeated the process for Karen as well. If they were going to treat me like an enemy, I'd treat them as strangers. I also had to inform the extended family of what had happened. I knew my parents would twist the narrative to make me look like the villain, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. So I called up my cousin Caleb, one of the few family members I trust, and explained everything. "Dude," Caleb replied. When I finished explaining, "That's insane. They seriously tried to sue you." "Not yet," I replied, "but they're threatening to. I wanted to give you the heads up because I'm sure they're going to start spreading lies about me." "Don't worry," Caleb said. "I've got your back. And honestly, good for you for cutting them off. They sound toxic as hell." That conversation gave me the confidence to contact a few other relatives. Some were supportive, like Caleb. but others were less so. My Aunt Janice, for example, was fully on Team Carol. "Jack, they're your parents," she explained, as if that excused everything they'd done. "You can't just walk away from them." "Yes, I can," I replied firmly, "and I have. They've crossed every line imaginable, and I'm not going to let them keep dragging me down." I knew Janice thought I was a disappointment. She said, "Family is family, Jack. You'll regret this someday." "Maybe," I answered, not believing it, "but for now, I'm choosing peace." However, I only experienced tranquility for a few days. Of course, about a week after blocking them, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Jack," my mother asked, her voice shrill and angry. "You blocked me." I sighed, already regretting the decision to pick up. "Yes, Mom, I blocked you." Why would you do that?" she asked, as if the explanation wasn't abundantly clear. "Because I'm done," I explained. "I'm done with the manipulation, the guilt trips, the lies, the demands. I'm done with all of it," she scoffed. "You're being ridiculous. Do you really think you can just cut us out of your life like this?" "Yes," I answered simply. "I can, and I have." She attempted to argue, of course. She labeled me selfish, ungrateful, and cruel, as usual, but I didn't take the bait. I simply stated politely that I was not interested in continuing the conversation and hung up. I then blocked the number. Following that, I doubled down on the no-contact strategy. I instructed Caleb to notify me if my parents or Karen attempted to contact me through him, but otherwise I didn't want to hear anything about them. For the most part, he respected it, though he would occasionally slip in an update. Months passed, and the longer I went without communicating, the more I realized how much I'd gained without the constant turmoil. I had a lot more time and energy to devote to the things that were most important. Of course, there were still moments of uncertainty. Every now and again, I would hear a voice in the back of my mind saying, "What if they're right? What if you were being selfish?" But then I'd recall everything they'd done, everything I'd been through, and the uncertainty would vanish. Up until today, I had no idea what had happened to Karen. I recently received another call from Caleb. "Hey, just thought you'd want to know Karen filed for bankruptcy." I paused for a moment to take in the news. Well, I thought to myself, maybe now she learned to take responsibility for her actions. "Maybe," Caleb responded. But we both knew that was improbable. Karen wasn't exactly the type to learn from her mistakes. My parents continued their smear campaign for a while, but it appeared to fizzle out. I suppose even their most ardent followers grew bored of hearing the same story repeatedly. By the time the holidays arrived, I was relieved because I wouldn't have to spend Christmas pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Instead, I spent the holidays with friends from my chosen family, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel as if I was walking on eggshells. I could just be myself, free of my parents' expectations and Karen's demands. It wasn't easy to cut them off. It was one of the most difficult decisions I'd ever made, but looking back, I know it was the right decision. Sometimes you have to distance yourself from toxic people, even if they are relatives, and while not always easy, it is worthwhile. Caleb still sends me periodic updates, but I've made it clear that I don't want to hear anything more. My parents were still attempting to salvage their reputations when I last heard from them, and Karen was fighting to regain her footing following the bankruptcy. I wish I felt bad for them, but I don't. They made their choices, and now they are dealing with the consequences. As for me, I refuse to be a puppet dancing on strings held by others. I am moving forward, and I've surrounded myself with individuals who genuinely care about me and respect my boundaries. I'm concentrating on my profession, interests, and personal happiness. And while I don't know what the future holds, I know this for sure: I'll never let anyone, family or not, bring me down again.